Family is supposed to be sacred. Blood ties are meant to be unbreakable bonds of loyalty and trust. At least, that is what I believed until the day of my grandmother's funeral, when I discovered just how easily those bonds could be severed by greed. My grandmother, Eleanor Blackwood, was a formidable woman who built an empire from nothing. Starting with a small bakery in the 1960s, she expanded into a chain of successful restaurants across 3 states. She was brilliant, tough, and fair. Qualities I had always admired and strived to emulate. Growing up, I spent every summer working in her restaurants, learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. While my cousins were at beach resorts or summer camps, I was mastering inventory management, staff scheduling, and customer service under my grandmother's watchful eye. "Janet," she would say, "this business is built on attention to detail and genuine care for people. Never forget that." I never did. By the time I finished my business degree, I had already developed 3 new menu concepts that increased revenue by 15% across all locations. I modernized their outdated ordering system, created their first successful social media presence, and established a catering division that opened entirely new revenue streams. In the 5 years since I had joined the company full-time, profits had increased by 30%. My grandmother noticed. "You have the heart of this business in your blood," she told me during our last meeting before her unexpected stroke. "When I am gone, you will be the one to carry on my legacy." I had wept at those words, not just because they acknowledged my hard work, but because I could not imagine a world without her stern guidance and unexpected moments of tenderness. I could not have known that just 3 weeks later, she would be gone. The day of her funeral was appropriately somber. Dark skies, light rain, as if the weather itself was mourning her loss. Hundreds of people came to pay their respects, from longtime employees to business associates to the many community members she had helped over the years. Through my grief, I felt a sense of pride seeing the impact she had made on so many lives. My family was small, just my grandmother, my Uncle Robert, his son Michael, and me. Uncle Robert had never shown much interest in the restaurant business, pursuing a career in finance instead. Michael had followed in his father's footsteps, working at the same investment firm. They had visited during holidays, but neither had ever rolled up their sleeves to help with the family business. After the funeral, we gathered at my grandmother's home for the reading of the will. Her attorney, Mr. Winters, had been her friend and advisor for over 40 years. His face was a mask of professional detachment, as we settled into the leather chairs of my grandmother's study. "Before I begin," Mr. Winters said, adjusting his glasses, "I want to express my personal condolences. Eleanor was not just a client but a dear friend." We all nodded our appreciation. Then he opened the folder before him and began to read. Most of the initial bequests were expected. Generous donations to her favorite charities, specific items of jewelry to old friends, and substantial sums to loyal employees. Then came the matter of the business. "Regarding Blackwood Restaurants Incorporated," Mr. Winters read, "I hereby bequeath all shares and interests to be divided as follows. 30% to my son, Robert Blackwood, 30% to my grandson, Michael Blackwood, and 40% to my granddaughter, Janet Blackwood, who shall also assume the position of Chief Executive Officer." My breath caught in my throat. Though she had hinted at her plans, hearing them confirmed was overwhelming. I would be leading the company, with a controlling interest that ensured I could implement the vision my grandmother and I had discussed so many times. "Additionally," Mr. Winters continued, "I leave my primary residence and the sum of $3 million to Janet Blackwood, in recognition of her dedication to preserving my life's work." The room fell silent. I could feel Uncle Robert's and Michael's eyes boring into me. I kept my gaze fixed on Mr. Winters, trying to process what I had just heard. "Is that all?" Uncle Robert asked, his voice strained. Mr. Winters nodded. "That concludes the reading of the will. Are there any questions?" "This cannot be right," Uncle Robert said, standing abruptly. "My mother would never have left such disproportionate assets to Janet. There must be a mistake." "I assure you there is no mistake," Mr. Winters replied calmly. "Eleanor was very clear about her wishes. She revised this will just 6 months ago. Of sound mind and without any undue influence." "Without undue influence?" Michael scoffed. Janet has been hovering around her for years, obviously manipulating her. I was stunned by the accusation. That is not true, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the anger building inside me. I worked with Grandma because I cared about her legacy, not because I expected anything in return. How convenient, Uncle Robert sneered. The devoted granddaughter who just happens to walk away with everything. Not everything, Mr. Winters corrected. You and Michael each received 30% of a very profitable business. Eleanor felt this was fair given your limited involvement in the company's operations. Limited involvement? We're family, Michael exclaimed. That should count for something. It did, I said quietly. It counted for 60% of a business you never helped build. Uncle Robert's face flushed with anger. We will contest this will. My mother was not in her right mind. Mr. Winters removed his glasses. You are certainly entitled to try, Robert. However, I should inform you that Eleanor anticipated this reaction. She underwent a comprehensive mental health evaluation immediately after finalizing this will, specifically to prevent such challenges. The documentation is extensive and conclusive. The look of shock on Uncle Robert's face would have been satisfying under different circumstances. But all I felt was sadness. Sadness that my grandmother had accurately predicted this ugly scene. Sadness that my family cared more about what they could get than what she had built. This meeting is over, Uncle Robert declared, grabbing his coat. Janet, do not think this is finished. You will hear from our attorneys. With that, he and Michael stormed out, leaving me alone with Mr. Winters. I am sorry about that, he said kindly. Eleanor knew this would not be easy for you. I nodded, still processing everything. Thank you for your help, Mr. Winters. I think I need some time alone. He patted my shoulder as he gathered his papers. Your grandmother was immensely proud of you, Janet. She knew exactly what she was doing. After he left, I wandered through the house, my house now, trying to feel connected to my grandmother's presence. In her study, I noticed a sealed envelope on her desk with my name written in her distinctive handwriting. Inside was a letter. My dearest Janet, it began. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and Mr. Winters has executed my will. I can imagine the scene that just unfolded. Robert and Michael have always been predictable in their reactions. Their anger reveals their true characters. They value inheritance over contribution, entitlement over earning. Tears blurred my vision as I continued reading. I have left you the controlling interest in the company because you have earned it. Not just through your hard work, but through your genuine love for what we have built together. However, I must warn you, Robert and Michael will not accept this quietly. They will try to take what they believe should be theirs. Be vigilant, be smart, and remember everything I have taught you about human nature and business. The letter continued with specific advice and warnings, including a postscript that sent a chill down my spine. Check the safe in my bedroom. The combination is your birthday. What you find there may prove useful in the days ahead. That night, I found the safe hidden behind a painting in my grandmother's bedroom. Inside was a black leather journal and a USB drive. The journal contained meticulous records of every interaction my grandmother had had with Uncle Robert and Michael over the past 15 years, including detailed accounts of their repeated attempts to pressure her into giving them control of the business. There were transcripts of conversations, copies of manipulative emails, and notes about business proposals that would have stripped the company's assets for quick profit. The USB drive contained recorded conversations. My grandmother had apparently been recording important discussions for years as a memory aid, which in many cases included damning admissions from my uncle and cousin about their intentions for the company. We could strip it for parts, Michael had said in one recording. The real estate alone is worth millions, and we could sell the brand to a national chain. Just be patient, Uncle Robert had replied. Once Mother is gone, we can convince Janet to sell. She's just a girl who got lucky with a few menu ideas. She will not be able to run this business without your grandmother. Just a girl. Those words echoed in my head as I processed their betrayal. Not just of me, but of my grandmother's legacy, the business she had built from nothing, the employees who depended on those jobs, the communities served by our restaurants. The next morning, I received a call from Michael. His tone was conciliatory, almost friendly. "Janet, I am sorry about yesterday," he said smoothly. "Dad and I were just shocked. We were not prepared for how the will was structured." "I understand," I replied, matching his pleasant tone while my blood boiled at his insincerity. "The thing is, we've been talking, and we think there's a better solution for everyone," Michael continued. "We'd like to buy you out. Give you a clean break. You could do whatever you want. Travel the world, start your own business, anything." "That is an interesting proposition," I said. "How much are you offering?" He named a figure that was substantial but significantly undervalued my shares. "We think that's more than fair for someone your age. It's enough to set you up for life, without the burden of running a major company." "I will need to think about it," I said. "Can we meet tomorrow to discuss it further? Maybe at the downtown restaurant at 2 p.m. Michael sounded pleased. "Perfect. Dad and I will be there." "I think you are making a wise decision, Janet." I spent the rest of the day gathering everything I needed and making several important calls. By the time I walked into the restaurant the next day, I was fully prepared. Uncle Robert and Michael were already seated at a corner table, looking confident and relaxed. Both stood when I approached, with Uncle Robert even pulling out my chair. A courtesy I had never received from him before. "Janet, you look well," he said with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "I hope you've had time to consider our offer." "I have," I replied, setting my leather portfolio on the table. "But before we discuss that, I thought we should talk about Grandma's record-keeping habits." Their expressions remained neutral, but I noticed Michael's hand tighten around his water glass. "What about them?" Uncle Robert asked. I removed the journal from my portfolio and placed it on the table. "She kept very detailed records of your conversations over the years, particularly about your plans for the company." Michael forced a laugh. "Old people and their hobbies. What's your point?" In response, I pulled out my phone and played a short clip from one of the recordings. Their voices filled the air between us, discussing how they would strip the company for parts after my grandmother was gone. The color drained from both their faces. "Where did you get that?" Uncle Robert demanded. "Grandma gave it to me, along with about 30 other recordings just like it," I said calmly. "She also left detailed records of how you tried to manipulate her into changing her will multiple times. How you suggested she was becoming mentally incompetent when she refused." "That's not," Michael began, but I cut him off. "It's all documented, Michael. Every conversation, every threat, every attempt to undermine her." I closed the journal and looked them both in the eye. "So here's my counteroffer. You can pursue your legal challenge to the will, in which case I will be forced to submit all of this evidence to the court. It would make fascinating reading for the judge, not to mention the press." Uncle Robert's face had turned from white to red. "You wouldn't dare." Or, I continued as if he had not spoken, "You can sell me your shares of the company." Michael laughed incredulously. "You cannot afford to buy us out." I smiled. "Actually, I can. You see, I've been saving nearly every penny I've earned since I started working for Grandma at 16. And I've made some excellent investments over the years, with guidance from Grandma's financial advisors, the ones you never bothered to consult." I slid 2 identical contracts across the table. "I'm prepared to offer each of you $5 million for your shares. That's more than fair market value, as I'm sure you know from your careers in finance." "This is blackmail," Uncle Robert sputtered. "No," I corrected him. "This is business. Grandma taught me that everything is negotiable, but you should always negotiate from a position of strength." I gestured to the contracts. "You have 24 hours to decide. After that, my offer expires, and I'll be forced to protect my interests through other channels." I stood to leave, but Michael grabbed my wrist. "You cannot do this to us. We're family." I looked down at his hand until he released me. Family does not try to destroy what their loved ones built. Family does not call me just a girl who got lucky with a few menu ideas. Family does not plan to strip for parts a business that employs hundreds of people who depended on my grandmother, and now depend on me. I picked up my portfolio and straightened my jacket. 24 hours, gentlemen. I suggest you use that time to consult with your attorneys. They will tell you I'm offering a very generous deal, considering the circumstances. As I walked away, I heard Uncle Robert mutter, "She's exactly like her grandmother." I smiled to myself. That was the first truthful thing he had said in years. The next morning, the signed contracts were delivered to my attorney's office. By noon, the money had been transferred to their accounts, and I was the sole owner of Blackwood Restaurants Incorporated. I should have felt triumph, but what I felt was a profound sense of responsibility. My grandmother had entrusted me with her life's work, and now I needed to honor that trust. My first official act as CEO was to call a company-wide meeting. Standing before hundreds of employees, many of whom had known me since I was a child, I shared my vision for the company's future. Not a dismantling, not a selling off of assets, but an expansion of my grandmother's vision with respect for the foundation she had built. Eleanor Blackwood believed in building things that last, I told them. She believed in treating employees like family, real family, the kind that supports and uplifts each other. I intend to continue that tradition. The applause was deafening, and in that moment, I could almost feel my grandmother standing beside me, nodding her approval. In the years that followed, I expanded the business just as my grandmother and I had planned. We opened new locations, launched a successful line of retail products, and established a foundation that provided culinary scholarships to underprivileged youth. The company's value tripled, and with it, the realization of what Uncle Robert and Michael had lost through their greed. They moved away shortly after our negotiation, relocating to the opposite coast to avoid the embarrassment of watching my success. I heard through mutual acquaintances that their investment firm had suffered several setbacks, and they were no longer enjoying the luxurious lifestyle to which they had become accustomed. I could have taken satisfaction in their downfall, but instead, I found myself feeling something unexpected, gratitude. Their betrayal had forced me to become stronger, more strategic, more determined than I might have been otherwise. In trying to destroy me, they had unwittingly helped forge me into the leader my grandmother had always believed I could be. 5 years after my grandmother's passing, I stood in the garden behind what was now my home. At the annual company picnic she had traditionally hosted, employees and their families filled the grounds, laughing and enjoying themselves in the summer sunshine. Many stopped to chat with me, sharing stories about my grandmother, and expressing their appreciation for how I had honored her legacy while moving the company forward. As the evening wound down, I found myself alone by the small memorial garden I had created in my grandmother's honor. I poured a small glass of her favorite whiskey and raised it in a silent toast. "We did it, Grandma," I whispered. "We protected what you built. And those who tried to take it from us? They learned a valuable lesson about underestimating the women in this family." The setting sun cast a golden glow across the garden as I sipped the whiskey, its warmth spreading through my chest. In this business, and in life, there were always going to be those who felt entitled to what others had built, those who would try to take rather than earn. My grandmother had prepared me for them. She had taught me that the best revenge was not just success, but success built on principle, integrity, and vision. Uncle Robert and Michael had sought to reduce her life's work to numbers on a balance sheet. They had failed to understand that a legacy is not just about money. It's about impact, about the lives touched and changed, about creating something meaningful that outlasts you. As darkness fell and the last guests departed, I remained in the garden, thinking about how quickly priorities can become clear when betrayal forces your hand. My uncle and cousin had shown their true colors, and in doing so, they had lost everything that truly mattered: respect, purpose, and the joy of being part of something greater than themselves. Their punishment was not just financial. It was knowing that they could have been part of this thriving legacy if they had chosen contribution over entitlement, patience over greed. Instead, they were left with nothing but money that would eventually run out and the knowledge of what they had thrown away. That, I reflected as I finished my whiskey, was the most perfect revenge of all. Not just winning, but winning in a way that honored everything my grandmother stood for. The business was flourishing, her values lived on, and those who had tried to destroy her legacy had been removed from it entirely, forced to watch from the sidelines as we soared to new heights without them. Sometimes, justice did not require elaborate schemes or public humiliation. Sometimes, justice was simply ensuring that those who deserved to succeed did succeed, and those who sought to take what they had not earned were left with nothing but regret and the bitter knowledge of their own moral failure. My grandmother had given me more than a business. She had given me the tools to protect what matters. And in the end, that had made all the difference.